Thank you, Maxim. I would like to greet all the participants of our training, and I would like to tell you how the support team performed as of today. Quality control works during the first stage. Just to add what Andrei has mentioned, I can I can add that out of 19 projects that started in 2014, there are only 3 projects left. I mean, 3 projects in Ukraine. These are projects related to buildings insulation, and there are 2 projects in Belarus. In Polotsk, it is street lighting, and in Chaos, it is the system of energy monitoring for water supply systems and heat supply systems. If I'm not mistaken, in Armenia we still have some projects on buildings. I hope we have already told you about the problems we face just on the construction stage. There are lots of unexpected things. We definitely pay lots of efforts into development of our budget and estimate documents. We hire lots of people. We really try to prepare everything in a good way on paper. We go through the procurement stage. Sometimes this stage really is very complicated. And when we finally get to the construction stage, very often, particularly in the Ukrainian projects, we have the following situation. The contractor says, okay, let's not talk what you have prepared here, and let's do it my way. Probably it will be even better. Definitely, we cannot agree with that proposal because these are demo projects, and the very idea that it is a demo project means that it should be an ideal project. And the works performed should be done on in a proper way. And therefore, we face lots of risks. There were lots of stories when, for example, the material was not of the quality we needed, or for example, there were cases when the material was good and it was stolen. We really see that there are lots of not good contractors. Site supervisors do not always perform their functions in a diligent way, and we see that all the efforts we take might be just good for nothing. Therefore, we initiated additional quality control. In fact, this is, let's say, conditional site supervision on the part of support team that is just supervising performance of construction works. In this slide, I have made a list of key functions of the experts. First of all, we hire independent experts. In particular, in the first stage, Andrei was taken to perform these functions, and also the colleagues from his organization. In other countries, we try to take on local experts. For example, in Moldova and in Armenia and in Georgia and in Belarus, at least for the second stage, we are going to follow the same practice because we really see that this practice is successful, it is positive, and it gives good results. Approximately once a month, our quality control experts comes to the site and participates in the whole process. As a rule, for this date, we plan a meeting of all the participants of the construction works. We discuss the current stage of construction works, plans for future potential the defects if they were detected, etc. Here you see the key functions and activities of our experts. I would like to state that our experts are very attentive to compliance with the requirements of design and estimate documentation. We really try to see that what is written on paper should be implemented in life, because we understand that design and estimate documentation has been verified by our international experts, and in our opinion, the design and estimate documentation that was approved actually includes the demonstration, that means best technical solutions. I'm not going to mention all the items here. This is actually the functions of site supervisors. The only difference is, and it has already been mentioned by Maxime, we are not the signatories of the contracts and agreements. It means we do not have any authorities to directly influence the construction works, because we do not hold any licenses on certificates. Our surnames are not mentioned in the declaration for the beginning of construction works. The only thing is that the site supervisor recruited by the client has all these rights and authorities, and in some extraordinary situations he can stop the construction works while we cannot do it. But regularly, we inform the donors, I mean the European Commissions, on what we have seen during our visits. And depending on their view on the situation, they take the corresponding solution on the level of the grant agreement. What is necessary for the quality control expert? What has already been mentioned in the previous presentation is mentioned here in the slide. First of all, you have to submit the protocols of the working meetings, the works schedule, the topical ones, the current ones, because in the first stage we had many cases when there was no schedules at all, and all the dates that were just mentioned were virtual ones. Probably tomorrow, probably in a month, probably somewhere sometime later. So we couldn't have a clear picture regarding the schedule. I would like also to stress that fact that weekly reports that were specially developed in order to trace the progress of construction works, because we do not have the chance to visit the sites weekly, should be done in a responsible way. And actually you should make, once again I just state this word once again, you should make the contractor and the site supervisor to do these reports. The reports are really very simple. There is a developed template and you have just to put a tick what has been done, what is planned for the next week. That's it. And so far the projects which already have some delays try now to prepare these reports, but you'd better do it when your grant agreement has not expired and when the project has not been prolonged. Also, just in order to see that the construction works are done in a legal way without any legal delays, we require additional documents. For example, the conclusion of the state expertise or the declaration on the beginning of the construction works, in order to make sure that there are no legal issues involved. Somehow pressed the wrong button. After the site visit, we produce a report, and the main idea of this report is that our experts just provide their recommendations on improvement of technical solutions that already have been implemented, or regarding correcting or removal of the defects detected. The report includes the list of the defects, their description, and the photos of the defects, as well as recommendations how they can be removed. Probably I would repeat myself. I will repeat myself, but still there were situations when our recommendations were fully ignored by the contractor. And we try to be really tough regarding this discussion. And if we do not have the direct influence on the performance of construction works, definitely we have to prove to our donors that we try to control quality. And in case we see that we are ignored, our recommendations are ignored, and nothing has been changed, we just appeal to the delegation of the European Union, of the European Commission, and fully describe the situation and what could be the consequences. The final decision is taken by the European Union, by the European Commission. Probably nothing will happen, or, for example, the project can be terminated and the contract can be stopped. Therefore, I encourage you to exert your influence on site supervisors and on the contractors. Here you see what we actually had. You already seen some photos. Here you see some more photos. There are lots of photos like that. I can have the whole presentation consisting just out of photos. Typical defects regarding buildings, for example, error of closure or isolation joints, insufficient use of anchors. Let's talk once again about the windows. For example, you already have the window installed like that, and you try to insulate the facade. The external reveal distance does not allow you to put the insulator in a proper way. It just covers the glass, the window. And when we apply the previously discussed project, you can easily remove it. In this case, you have to cut the insulator. Here, the windows have been installed somehow the distance from the frame to the edge of the reveal is different, because every window will have different picture, and it means you will have to use the drawings in order to plan insulation for each window. Garbage, waste, sewage. Here you see the areas full of waste and garbage. We were not always given the materials for the certificate for the materials, different types of covering works that were performed not according to the quality standards. Some more examples we faced. This photo has been taken from the Ukrainian project. According to the standards, you cannot use foam plaster for internal reveals because it is a combustible material. And here, this is probably the issue related to site supervision, why still it was used here. The heat supply system. This is the real photo. We were not visiting the construction site. The construction works have been performed for 3 months already, and when we came, this was what we saw. So the question is, what have you done? They had to redo it. The second program was just great. It's obvious you cannot have the pipes like that, and definitely the design was not like that. It was a typical example when the contractor said, let's do it better. What was planned according to the design, according to the project? There are two or like types, two lines, two radiators on the side. Here you have the connection to it. This one goes here, this one goes here. So direct or connection. And there were ideas. Let's make it better. The first one, probably let's not have the pipes let's have the pipes in a horizontal way and have connection at the bottom. And the second idea was let's do it diagonally. So the idea probably was fine, but how to do this lower connection of the pipes, you have to understand how you would assemble them. And this is what you got as a result. Nobody wanted to have it like that. People wanted to make it better according to the idea. So, what was the end of the situation? My colleague actually took special equipment and was showing them how to do it. Just think about qualifications of your staff, of the construction staff. Probably the construction manager will be a qualified person, but the workers will probably be not qualified, or probably this will be too young workers. For example, the students that are studying at the vocational schools and were taken on the internship. So be ready for these cases. So you see that it's really difficult to mind all the smallest aspects, and later you just have the picture and people try to prove that it's okay. What we face very often, and probably sometimes you even cannot remove this defect, um, there are lots of already installed constructions and elements at the facade of the building. If you can do something about the aerial, TV aerial, so you can easily remove it. Here we have gas pipe, and definitely you are going to face some problems regarding it because you have to approve its de-assembling or de-installation with the gas service. And in order not to have such a situation, you should approve all these issues with the gas service at the project design stage. Cold bridges. This is something we try to uh, just settle during the design stage. If you do not deal with it, you are going to have a picture like that. Your building is insulated, therefore you have less density in the facade. There is natural infiltration of air. This infiltration is reduced, and as a result, you have thermal effect. In case you do not have ventilation, the humidity level is going higher, and therefore you have perfect conditions for the mold. Therefore, very often it is the situation when you have these reveals, therefore it is important not to have this cold. Here you have storage issues, construction materials storage. This is the real photo from the real side, construction site. In my opinion, this is just striking violation which should be punished legally up to criminal investigation, because definitely it's not the way the construction materials should be stored, particularly if they are funded from the budget of the dome or something. The installation of the windows. Very often we had lots of problematic issues related to the windows. In this case, these are defects performed by the contractor because definitely there was a mistake during the measurement stage, measurement of windows. And sometimes the gaps were up to 5 or 6 centimeters, so actually you could put your hand in the hole. Another problem we faced is quite specific. At some sites, uh, after the facades were painted, there were rusty spots. What is it? Actually, this is rust. Rust that becomes obvious when iron is oxidated. Somehow, iron goes to the construction of the facade. The potential source is mineral wool, mineral cotton wool. I was trying to study this issue in several information sources at the construction forums, and there are two potential reasons. Probably there were some problems or drawbacks related to mineral wool. It was probably produced with some violations, or the second reason was that during construction works, humidity regime was not followed. There was water inside, and somewhere there was iron. So these are local spots. These are small, like insular, and definitely it does not influence the quality of the facade, but definitely the aesthetics is not looking good. Whatever you do, whatever paints you use, these rusty spots will be seen, and definitely if it is important for the contractor to have a nice building, you have somehow to settle this issue. The best practical solution, which is also not very much expensive, is to just draw something somehow to mask, to disguise these spots.
And one more problem is that quite often in Ukraine we are faced with the situation when the deadlines for work performance are not kept to. All Ukrainian projects were not finished in time. And the main problem here is, as I think, well, actually, not one problem, but two problems, are that we have not that many qualified and competent staff because more and more of our specialists are leaving for abroad to Poland, and their main goal is to earn more money. And the other problem is that the construction sites where uh, the workers are registered, they are normally registered only informally. I mean, that's not official employment, which means that the management of the construction companies does not pay salaries to them. Definitely, they are waiting for a month or two, and then they say goodbye. And we have had a lot of situations when we came to the construction site and there were no people at all. But according to the contract, everything has been made by the contractor. Then the foreman comes and says that salaries are not paid, but that's not the problem of the customer. That is the problem of the construction company manager. And here comes the question: how do we, as a support team, as the customer, as site supervision, the cities, the municipalities, because they also need to be involved in the in solving of those problems, have to fight this because that is kind of an internal business of constructors. There have been cases when they provided a lot of promises that the next day they would do this, they would do that. And then, after 3 months of such promises, when we came on a visit, instead of two workers, 50 workers came, and within 3 weeks, they performed the works for 3 months. But the quality, well, you understand when there is already snow on the side, so what kind of facade insulation could you be talking about? According to legislation, no wet processes are allowed when the average daily temperature is +5. So unfortunately, I expect that we will be faced with the same problem in the second phase, and we need to get ready for that somehow. And already now we need to build some plans and build a dialogue with our contractors in order to require high quality and compliance with the deadlines from them. As far as the risk are concerned, you can see some facilities, destroyed facilities in Ukraine which collapsed. I'm trying to monitor the dynamics of any news which I hear on the news or which I find on the internet, and all the facilities which are represented here were under repairs. What was repaired? I don't know, but here are the consequences. Probably highly illustrative for us is the first example, which is a residential building in one of the districts of Kyiv. And this utility company was insulating the facade. And 10 years after that, this insulation, after the warranty period expired, it just fell off as a roll. You can see it. Another example is on the 1st of December last year, when the snow appeared, the roof fell. Well, we were happy because there were no victims, but the probability of having victims was very high because when it occurred, there were dancing classes for third grade students, but just the teachers saw in time that there was some displacement in the structure, and the children were evacuated, and then the roof fell down. Well, the reasons could be some wrong estimates of the designers when they didn't take into account the load of snow or poor quality material. Therefore, definitely we wouldn't like to have such consequences. And here is the last slide, which I think could serve as a good illustration of how you should communicate with site supervisors. You can see that even Peter the Great was covering this problem, and he decided that we should do the following. We should just whip the people who are to blame. I don't know whether we're going really to whip them, but we have to be very strict with them because the people who are to blame need to be responsible. Therefore, you need to establish a dialogue for the quality of our projects to go up and to be at least not worse, but better than in the first phase projects. That's it. If you have any questions, you are welcome. Here is one question. For example, a couple of years ago, I saw by my own eyes how the facade was insulated at the temperature of -7. How could we influence their builders? Because if there is a probability that we will have such cases. So how could we affect the work of those performing insulation works? Well, I think that everything depends on the circumstances. If your grant contract has already expired, you probably don't have any other way out. But of course, it's better to somehow prevent this situation from happening. And we have had cases when we just recommended to conserve the project, the facility for the winter period, and we clearly indicated it in our recommendations. But if the deadline is coming, we recommended to the team of the project to somehow extend the project, still do the calculations to understand when the construction will be over, and to indicate the deadlines in the additional agreement to the grant contract. You need to live on that construction site and to understand the situation from the inside in order to understand the reasons for the delays. In Slavotic, by the way, we also had a similar story. Just there were two people dealing with reviews, and where all the others, well, nobody knew. And then information came from some informal sources that they hadn't been paid, and that's why they just left the workplace. And how could they demand salaries if they are not official workers and if they don't have any contracts with the construction company? Maybe it would be worth checking the staff of the construction company at the tendering phase in order to, in some way, ask for salary sheets or. Well, I don't know how this could be done, but the problem is obvious and we are really dependent on it, in particular in Ukraine. Thank you, Dmitry, for the presentation. I would like to specify the following thing. At the last training, both you and Maxim recommended to us that, in spite of the fact that the customer chooses the organization which will perform site supervision, and I was explaining to you some cases from Belarus, probably you remember this, but in order to guarantee independent examination, inspection, and quality of work performance, probably we need to hire an independent expert. Do I get it right that now you are considering, you as a support team, are considering the following option? For example, in Belarus, for Belarus, you will hire an independent expert who will check the quality of the work of site supervision at our demonstration facilities. Um, he- this specialist will primarily check the quality of the work performed, depending on what he identifies. Some issues will be raised as to the work of site supervision. I mean that he will not be checking the competence, their background, education of site supervisor, but it's nonsense. It will be obvious. Andrei, you wanted to add something? Concerning your previous question, you asked what you should do. You know, in your region now, all the companies which are rather smart have to be talked to. You need to convey the information to them that, okay, we are going to have this and that project, please do collect people, and you will get a record in your resume that you have worked for the EU project. Because just simple announcing of tender will not do any good. We have the example of the town of Dolina, where they organized the work in the way for 106 companies to come to their tender. And they announced it on the radio beforehand, and they had a lot of activities aimed at informing all good companies that the project will be available, and they were trying to encourage these companies to come. They opened the tender with the presence of the deputies, and the project has been implemented in a very adequate way. 106 participants in the tender. You mean 106 applications? Yes. 106 tender bids. And but you can also do the same in your region. Just communicate to prospective contractors and inform the companies which you know as companies with good reputation. Because you communicate with the colleagues in your region and you know what companies work adequately, inform them about the tender, because then you will have a chance to select not the cheapest but the best. Now, we have already discussed some problems of the tenders, but definitely you need to choose not the cheapest but a good tenderer, because otherwise your construction will last for 3 years, and every visit of the quality specialists will just block the construction because there will be problems with the very construction work performance. They will be of poor quality, and they need to inform everybody before the tender that they will not have a chance to steal anything and that they should not provide reduced prices. I would also like to add the following. We had a case. In particular, Dmitry also came to Moldova. We had a poor quality work performer, a tough company, I would say. But we were trying to exert pressure on him through our image. We were even trying to intimidate him in a way, saying that take care because your image will be tarnished and you will never participate in any EU delegation funded projects. And we also involved another company, non Moldovan company, and it appeared that this non-Moldovan company was trying to pressurize its Moldovan partner for it to do everything in an adequate way because they already understand what image stands for and what it means. And we had another experience. I'm just answering the question: what should be done if you cannot do anything with the contractor? It just refuses to work. Within one of our large-scale projects which dealt with the replacement of the heating system and refurbishment of the boiler house and at one of the Republican level hospital, when the contractor refused to remove the defects which were identified by technical experts, we just hired for the money of this contractor another company which introduced those changes, and we didn't pay this money to the contractor. And we didn't even have to activate the bank guarantee. Just we did it that way. If you refuse, like we wrote two official letters of warning that this would happen. The first one was that it would happen, and the second one was already about the work, the commencement of the works done by another company, and it helped. We, by the way, also have one project like this in Voznesensk, where the contractor has performed 70% of the works, of the scope of the works, and under the contract, these works were paid for, and then everybody disappeared from the construction site. There was no foreman, there was no builder, nobody. And the applicant, which was an NGO in this case, just dissolved the contract with this company, and it was rather difficult to do this because according to the legislation you need to clearly coordinate all the handover certificates, acceptance certificates, and you need a lot of confirmations to be provided by site supervisor, and only after that you can dissolve the contract. So the procedure was rather long. It lasted for about a month, and all the more the contractor was not coming into contact. But when the question of dissolution of the contract was raised, they were clearly delaying the process. So they were not interested in doing the works, but they were not eager to dissolve the contract. But if you don't dissolve the contract with the contractor, you cannot engage any new contractor. But thanks God, they managed to do everything well, and now they are about to finish. The new contractor is about to finish the works. Which means that we are slowly moving over to the procedure of contractor selection. And if we are considering the situation from local authorities, every mayor would want all the taxes to be paid to the local municipality, because if the money of the EU is tax-free, then the money of the local, but at the same time the local budget is not free, tax-free. And we are waiting for the response from the Ministry of Economy as to what amount of money will be tax-free. And on listening to all the remarks and comments made, I have made the conclusion that local contractor is better, because you have some measures of administrative pressure. You can spoil his image. You can talk to him, and if a person has come from Moldova and you are you claim that you are trying to intimidate him, well, I think that it will be a problem for you. But if you are arranging and performing an international tender, and you may expect that people from Moldova will come there, and entering a foreign market, these people from Moldova will try to show their class and their high quality of works. And the same goes about the Ukrainian Belarus companies which are enter the Moldovan market. I was really frustrated because Moldova seems to be a small country and we don't have the funding of a large scale like Ukraine or Belarus have or other countries have, but even our small market, as I thought small, seems to be interesting for Ukrainian and Belarus companies. Therefore, it means that all the more your markets are interesting for our companies. So I'm going to tell you that literate, competent companies will really try to do their best to not just perform the works quite well, but to somehow find their niche in the market. Well, the only thing is they cannot do is to pay the taxes to the budget of the city. Well, maybe as a result of registration, re-registration, but every mayor wants the money to be paid to the budget, definitely. And if we have a situation that during application the bills of quantity was 1.5 billion and now it's about 6 billion, so the taxes to the budget, that's already something. You may have it as a requirement that any foreign company that wants to perform works in your region should and there is a mechanism for that, a well-developed a mechanism, which, by the way, functions even within CIS countries. That it has to open a local subsidiary, and the money is transferred there. Local taxes are deducted, and well, that's a mechanism. You know, in Slavutic, that's the way they did, but that was not the requirement of the tender. That was rather a gentleman agreement between the parties. And well, they really registered some subsidiary or some branch, and they paid taxes at the place of their registration, and the taxes were paid to local budget. But that was kind of a gentleman agreement, because from the point of view of the Ukrainian legislation, this sort of requirements would be considered to be discrimination. Preferences should be given to local companies. Unfortunately, you cannot set requirements like that. But generally, I think that there is no universal recipe, and if all the components are the same, I think a local company is better than a foreign one because it will do everything well and it will learn how to do it and will further keep working with your facilities. We still have 14 minutes. If you have any further questions, you may still ask them. If you want to have some remarks, some comments, if you want to share your experience. The only thing is that I've put the slide shown by Norbert on the screen, onto the screen, just to remind you about all the stakeholders involved in the process. And in fact, have a look at that. If we're talking about quality, how many parties are involved there, or how many prospective uh, inspectors are involved there? That these are you as a project team, or the customer, or the municipality, or the city council, and you or your technical staff are entitled to check the quality of construction works delivered by construction companies. You also have hired site supervision, which is entitled to do this officially, to make inspections of the works. You also have the designer with a more advisory role, but but they are checking whether the works correspond to the design solutions envisaged in the design. And here we are, support team, and through additional visits aimed at quality control, we are also helping you to achieve a good result. And we are trying in this way to make the builders perform all the works with proper quality. So, in fact, the whole structure and all the authorities and competences are there. But this scheme could remain zero if there is no political will of the whole team and of the municipality to do this, because you are still in the center. You are technical experts, you are project managers, and it is in your hands that organization of the whole construction process lies and its quality guarantee lies. Because we, a support team, design company, construction company, site supervision, are not entitled without you to make the scheme really work in practice. Well, I think that.